There I was, sitting at our family dining table on what should have been a celebration for both of us. My brother Tyler had just graduated from State University with his business degree, and Dad was making a toast. He raised his wine glass high, grinning from ear to ear as he looked at Tyler. Then came the words that would shatter my world. "Congratulations, son. Here are the keys to your brand new Honda Civic." Tyler's eyes lit up as Dad tossed him a set of shiny car keys. But then Dad turned to me with a completely different expression, his smile vanishing like someone had flipped a switch. "Myron, rent is due Sunday. $950. You are an adult now." I felt my stomach drop. I had to ask, why do I have to pay rent while Tyler gets rewarded? Dad looked me straight in the eye and delivered the blow that would change everything, because he is worth it. Those 4 words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Because he is worth it. I sat there, frozen fork halfway to my mouth, as the reality of what my father had just said sank in. 28 years of life, and this was his assessment of my value compared to Tyler's. The silence at the table was deafening. Mom kept cutting her pot roast into smaller and smaller pieces, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Tyler actually chuckled, the sound grating against my nerves, like fingernails on a chalkboard. Finally, someone said what we were all thinking. Tyler muttered under his breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. He started examining his new car keys, spinning the keychain around his finger. "I cannot wait to take this baby on a road trip to California with the guys from my fraternity." I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Excuse me for a minute." My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else's throat. I walked to the guest bathroom down the hall, the one with the mirror that had been there since I was a kid. The same mirror where I used to practice what I would say when I finally stood up to Dad. But I never did. I just kept taking whatever he dished out, thinking that eventually he would see my worth. Looking at my reflection, I saw a man who had been fooling himself for way too long. I saw someone who had been working 2 jobs since he was 18, helping pay household expenses, never asking for anything in return. I saw someone who had been living a lie. When I returned to the dining room, Tyler was already showing off his keys to Mom, talking about all the places he planned to drive. Road trips every weekend, spring break in Florida. Maybe I will even drive to New York and check out some business opportunities there. Dad nodded approvingly. That sounds like exactly what a young man with ambition should be doing. Tyler, you have always known how to set goals and achieve them. College was just the beginning for you. What about me? The question escaped before I could stop it. I've been working 60 hours a week between the auto parts store and the warehouse. I have not taken a vacation in 3 years. I've been paying you almost $1,000 every month in rent. Dad wiped his mouth with his napkin, taking his time before answering. Myron, you chose your path. Tyler applied himself in school, earned his degree, and now he is reaping the rewards. You decided to take the easy route with community college and those dead-end jobs. Dead-end jobs. My voice was rising now, and I could not stop it. I work those jobs to help this family. I have been contributing to household expenses since before Tyler even graduated high school. And we appreciate your contribution. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Your father and I are grateful that you help out. Help out? As if I was some charity case who occasionally threw them a few dollars? Tyler leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Look, Myron, nobody forced you to stay here. You could have gotten your own place years ago. You choose to live here because it is convenient. That was when something inside me snapped. Not in an explosive way, but more like a rubber band that had been stretched too far for too long. I felt this strange calm wash over me. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. You know what, you are absolutely right, Tyler. I could have gotten my own place years ago. I stood up from the table, my napkin falling to the floor. And since I am apparently just a tenant here anyway, I think it is time I started looking at other housing options. Dad's expression shifted slightly, the first crack in his confident facade. Now hold on, son. There is no need to be dramatic about this. We are just trying to teach you some responsibility. Responsibility. I had been responsible since I was 16 years old, working part-time at Morrison's Grocery while Tyler played soccer and went to parties. I had been responsible when I took out student loans for my community college classes, while Tyler's tuition was paid in full. I had been responsible every single month when I handed over $950 in rent money without question. But apparently responsibility was not worth a graduation gift. Responsibility was not worth the same kind of celebration Tyler was getting. Responsibility was just expected, never rewarded. I think I have been plenty responsible, I said quietly. Maybe too responsible. And that was when I discovered the first piece of information that would change everything. Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook, the kind he used to track household expenses. He flipped through a few pages, then looked up at me. Actually, since we are talking about responsibility, your rent payment is going into a special account I have been maintaining. It is all being saved for Tyler's future business ventures. Young entrepreneurs need startup capital, and your contributions have been quite helpful in building that fund. The room started spinning. My rent money, the $950 I had been faithfully paying every month for 3 years, was being used to fund my brother's future, while I struggled to save anything for myself. Tyler looked uncomfortable for the first time that evening. Dad, maybe you should not have... Should not have what? I interrupted. Should not have told me that I have been unknowingly funding my brother's trust fund while I eat ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week. I did quick math in my head. $950 times 12 months times 3 years. Over $34,000. Money I had earned through sweat and long hours, money I had handed over, thinking it was helping my family, money that was actually being hoarded for Tyler's benefit. It is not like that, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. We are teaching you both different lessons. Tyler needs to understand that success is rewarded. You need to understand that contributions to family are expected. Expected from me. Rewarded for him. I looked around the table one more time. At Mom, who was still staring at her plate. At Tyler, who was clutching his car keys like a lifeline. At Dad, who genuinely seemed to believe that his system was fair and reasonable. I need to think about this, I said finally. Think about what Dad asked. Your rent is still due on Sunday regardless of whatever existential crisis you think you are having. I walked toward the stairs leading to my room but paused at the bottom step. You know what the really crazy part is? I actually believed that someday you would see that I was worth something too. I thought maybe when Tyler graduated, there would be something for both of us. A car, a celebration, an acknowledgement that your older son had been working his tail off to help this family. Dad set down his wine glass with more force than necessary. Myron, you get acknowledgement every day by having a roof over your head and food on the table. Food that I help pay for with my rent money. A roof that I help maintain with my rent money. Everything in this house that I help provide with my rent money, which apparently goes straight into Tyler's college fund. The silence stretched between us like a chasm that had been years in the making. I realized that no matter what I said, no matter how logical my argument, Dad would never see me the way he saw Tyler. I would always be the son who was expected to contribute. Tyler would always be the son who was expected to succeed. I am going upstairs, I said. Your rent is still due Sunday, Dad called after me. I stopped climbing and looked back at him. We will see about that. It was the first time in my entire life that I had challenged his authority, even in such a small way. The first time I had suggested that maybe, just maybe, things were not as fair as he claimed they were. As I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear Tyler starting up again about his road trip plans, and Dad encouraging him to think bigger, to consider all the opportunities that were now open to him with his new freedom. Freedom that I had helped pay for one rent check at a time. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every interaction I had ever had with Dad about money responsibility and family obligations. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not the explosive kind of anger, but the cold, calculating kind that makes you see things clearly for the first time. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and went downstairs for a glass of water. The house was quiet except for the humming of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. As I passed Dad's home office, I noticed the door was slightly open and the light was still on. Dad had always been particular about his office. Growing up, Tyler and I were strictly forbidden from going in there without permission. It was his sanctuary where he paid bills, filed taxes, and handled what he called serious adult business. But tonight, something about the open door seemed like an invitation. I pushed it open just wide enough to slip inside. Dad's desk was covered with papers folders and his laptop sitting open. I could see he had been working on some kind of spreadsheet before going to bed. The screen was still glowing and what I saw made my blood run cold. There were columns labeled Myron Rent, Tyler Education Fund Plus, and Monthly Transfer. Row after row of entries going back 36 months documenting every single rent payment I had made and where that money had gone. I sat down in Dad's chair and scrolled through the spreadsheet. Every $950 I had paid in rent had been deposited into something called the Tyler Education Fund Plus account. The running total at the bottom of the screen showed $34,200. But that was just the beginning. I opened Dad's filing cabinet, the one I had always assumed contained boring tax documents and insurance papers. Instead, I found folders labeled with our names. Tyler's folder was thick with scholarship applications, college brochures, and what looked like business plan templates. My folder was much thinner, containing copies of my rent payments and a document titled Myron Housing Agreement. I pulled out the housing agreement, a document I had signed 3 years ago without reading carefully. At the time, Dad had presented it as a simple formality, something to make our arrangement official. But reading it now with clear eyes, I realized it was much more than that. The agreement stated that I was officially a tenant, paying market rate rent for my room, with all the legal obligations that came with that status. What I had not realized was that being classified as a tenant meant Dad could claim me as a rental income source on his tax returns while still claiming me as a dependent. I took out my phone and started photographing everything. The spreadsheet, the bank statements, the housing agreement, all of it. With each picture, I took the scope of what had been done to me became clearer. But the real shock came when I found Dad's personal journal, a leather-bound notebook wedged behind some tax folders. I almost put it back feeling guilty about invading his privacy, but something made me flip it open. The entries about me were scattered throughout, but they painted a picture that made me sick to my stomach. Myron continues to be a reliable income source, read one entry from 6 months ago. Tyler will need significant startup capital after graduation. Myron's contributions should reach $40,000 by next year if current payment schedule continues. Another entry from just 3 months ago discussed Tyler's business ambitions with Linda today. She asked about helping Myron with his career development. Redirected conversation. Important to maintain Tyler as the investment-grade son. Myron's role is support, not competition. Investment-grade son, support, not competition. I kept reading, finding entry after entry that reduced me to nothing more than a financial resource to be managed and exploited. There were detailed calculations about how much money they could extract from me over the next 5 years. There were plans for Tyler's post-graduation life that included using my rent money for his apartment deposit, his car insurance, and even seed money for whatever business venture he decided to pursue. The worst part was an entry from last week. Tyler expressed some guilt about the car situation, reminded him that Myron chose his path, and Tyler earned his rewards. Important that Tyler does not develop misplaced sympathy that could interfere with family financial strategy. Family financial strategy. That was what I was. Not a son, not a valued family member, but a line item in their financial strategy. I photographed every relevant page, my hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. Then, I found something that made everything even worse. A folder marked Tax Strategy contained documents showing that Dad had been filing me as both a rental tenant and a dependent on his tax returns for the past 3 years. I was not a tax expert, but even I knew that was illegal. You cannot claim someone as a dependent while also claiming their rent payments as rental income. Dad had been double-dipping, getting tax benefits from having me as a dependent, while also getting tax deductions from claiming rental property income. I photographed those documents too, then carefully put everything back where I had found it. As I was closing the filing cabinet, I discovered one more thing that sent me over the edge. A handwritten note, apparently from a conversation Dad had with his brother Gary, detailing how Dad had told the entire extended family that I was unstable and financially irresponsible. The note outlined Dad's strategy for preventing family members from offering me help or questioning the family dynamics. He had systematically poisoned my relationships with aunts, uncles, and cousins by portraying me as someone who could not be trusted with money or important decisions. I sat back in Dad's chair, staring at the evidence I had just collected. 3 years of my life, 3 years of working 60-hour weeks, and handing over almost every dollar I earned beyond basic survival needs all, so my family could fund Tyler's privileged lifestyle while portraying me as the family failure. The really sick part was how well it had worked. I had actually started to believe that maybe I was not applying myself hard enough. Maybe I was not ambitious enough. Maybe I really was the family disappointment. Dad's gaslighting had been so consistent and thorough that I had begun to gaslight myself. But now I had proof, documentation of financial abuse that went far beyond playing favorites. This was systematic exploitation with a paper trail that proved intent and planning. I looked at the photos on my phone. 37 images of documents that would change everything if I chose to use them. Evidence of illegal tax filing, evidence of financial manipulation, evidence of calculated emotional abuse designed to keep me trapped and compliant. For the first time in 3 years, I felt powerful instead of powerless. I had information that Dad did not know I had. I had proof of things he thought he had hidden successfully. I closed Dad's laptop, turned off the office light, and went back upstairs to my room. But I did not go to sleep. Instead, I sat at my desk and started making lists. Lists of every time Dad had made me feel worthless while praising Tyler. Lists of every financial contribution I had made to the family that had gone unrecognized. Lists of every opportunity I had missed because I was too busy being responsible. By morning, I had a plan. Not a plan for revenge, but a plan for justice. A plan that would expose the truth and give me back the power that had been stolen from me, one rent payment at a time. Dad thought he was teaching me about responsibility. What he had actually taught me was that sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is refuse to be exploited by the people who claim to love you. I called in sick to both my jobs the next morning, something I had never done without actually being sick. The auto parts store manager, Mr. Rodriguez, sounded surprised when I called. "You feeling all right, Myron? You have not missed a day in over 2 years." "Just need to handle some personal business," I told him. "Should be back tomorrow." "Take care of yourself, son. Whatever it is, I hope you get it sorted out." The warehouse supervisor was less understanding, but I did not care anymore. I had bigger concerns than perfect attendance records. My first stop was the public library, where I spent 3 hours researching tenant rights, financial abuse laws, and tax fraud penalties. What I discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. Encouraging because I clearly had legal grounds for recovering the money that had been improperly collected from me. Terrifying because the tax fraud situation was potentially serious enough to result in criminal charges. I printed out articles about adult children being exploited by parents' cases where family members had been prosecuted for financial abuse, and IRS guidelines about dependent claims versus rental income. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, noticed me printing so many documents and asked if I needed help with research. Just trying to understand some legal issues, I told her. If you need more specialized help, there is a legal aid clinic that meets here every Tuesday evening. Free consultations for people who cannot afford attorneys. I made a note of that. Tuesday was 4 days away, but having professional legal advice could be crucial. After the library, I drove to the bank where I had been a customer since I was 18. I had never thought much about banking before, just used it as a place to deposit my paychecks and withdraw rent money. But today I was there as someone seeking information about financial recovery options. The branch manager, Mrs. Patterson, had known me for years. She was a woman in her 50s who always remembered my name and asked about my family when I came in. Today, when I requested a private consultation, she seemed concerned. "Is everything all right, Myron? You look troubled." I showed her some of the documentation I had photographed explaining the situation as objectively as I could. Her expression changed from concern to shock to anger as I walked through the evidence. "This is financial abuse," she said flatly. "There is no other way to describe this. Your father has been exploiting your trust and your family loyalty to fund your brother's lifestyle while keeping you in a subordinate position." She explained options for recovering funds that had been obtained through misrepresentation, talked about the bank's role in reporting suspected financial abuse, and gave me contact information for organizations that helped people in situations like mine. "Myron, I have seen this before, usually with elderly parents being exploited by their children. But it works the same way when parents exploit their adult children. It is about power and control, not money." As I left the bank, I felt something I had not felt in years: validation. Mrs. Patterson had confirmed what I was starting to understand. This was not about me being ungrateful or failing to appreciate my family. This was about abuse. My next call was to my cousin Sarah, who worked as a paralegal for a law firm in the next town over. Sarah and I had been close as kids, but I had not talked to her much since she started her career. When I explained why I was calling, she immediately offered to meet for lunch. "I cannot provide legal advice," she said, as we sat in a small cafe downtown. "But I can tell you that what you are describing sounds like textbook financial exploitation. The tax situation alone is a serious federal crime." She looked through the photos on my phone, taking notes as she scrolled. "Myron, this is not just family drama. This is documented fraud. Your father has been claiming you as a dependent while also claiming rental income from you. That is illegal, period. What do I do about it? You have several options. You could file a complaint with the IRS, which could result in criminal charges. You could pursue civil action to recover the money that was taken from you under false pretenses. You could do both. Or you could try to resolve it within the family first, though given the level of planning and deception involved, I doubt that would be effective." She paused, studying my face. "The question is, what do you want to accomplish? Do you want your money back? Do you want your father to face consequences for what he did? Do you want to rebuild family relationships? Because some of those goals might be incompatible." That was the question I had been avoiding all day. What did I actually want? I wanted the $34,000 back, obviously. Money I had earned and deserved to have for my own future. But more than that, I wanted acknowledgement of what had been done to me. I wanted my family to understand that their treatment of me had been wrong, harmful, and unacceptable. "I want justice," I said, finally. "I want them to understand that I am not their financial resource to be managed and exploited. I want Tyler to know that his entire lifestyle has been built on my labor, and I want my money back." Sarah nodded. "Then you need to be prepared for the fact that this might destroy your family relationships permanently. People do not usually forgive being exposed for this kind of behavior. Maybe those relationships are not worth preserving if they were built on lies and exploitation anyway. After lunch with Sarah, I drove around town for a while, thinking about everything I had learned. By evening, I had made my decision. I was going to leave, but not quietly. I was going to make sure they understood exactly why I was leaving and exactly what I had discovered about their family financial strategy. But first, I needed to talk to someone who had known me before all this started, someone who could remind me who I was before years of manipulation had convinced me I was worthless. I called my high school friend Jake, who worked as an accountant for a small firm across town. We had stayed in touch over the years, getting together for a beer every few months, but I had never told him much about my family situation. "Hey man, you free for dinner tonight? I need to talk through something pretty serious." "Of course, everything okay?" "Not really. I will explain when I see you." We met at a sports bar near his apartment, the same place we used to go after high school basketball games. Jake listened without interrupting as I explained the entire situation, showing him the documentation I had gathered. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring at his beer bottle. "Myron, I had no idea. I mean, I knew your family was kind of weird about money and responsibilities, but this is insane. This is not normal family stuff. This is criminal behavior." "You really think so? I keep wondering if I am overreacting." "Dude, look at me." Jake leaned forward, his expression serious. "I have been doing taxes and bookkeeping for 5 years. What your father did with the dependent claim while also claiming rental income is fraud. Black and white, no gray area federal crime fraud. And the emotional manipulation part is just sick." He pulled out his phone and started making calculations. $34,000 over 3 years, plus interest, plus penalties for tax fraud, plus potential damages for emotional distress. You could be looking at a settlement worth $50,000 or more. It is not really about the money anymore. Maybe not for you, but it should be. You earned that money. You sacrificed 3 years of your young adult life to earn that money. You deserve to get it back and then some. Jake offered to help me prepare documentation for any legal proceedings, and more importantly, he offered me a place to stay while I figured out my next steps. "You can crash on my couch as long as you need to. My roommate moved out last month, so I actually have a spare bedroom. Stay until you get your own place." For the first time in days, I felt like I had allies instead of just evidence. People who saw the situation clearly and supported my right to stand up for myself. As Jake and I talked through potential strategies, I realized something important. The people who actually cared about me, like Mrs. Patterson, Sarah, and Jake, all had the same reaction to my story. They were horrified by what had been done to me, and they encouraged me to take action to protect myself. The only people who would be upset about me standing up for myself were the ones who had been benefiting from my exploitation. That night, lying on Jake's couch, I made my final decision. I was not just going to leave quietly. I was going to leave with a message that made it impossible for them to pretend this had been anything other than what it was. I was going to write them a letter that documented everything I had discovered, everything I had endured, and everything I intended to do about it. And then I was going to disappear until I was ready to deal with the consequences on my own terms. I spent the entire next day writing and rewriting the letter that would end my relationship with my family, as it had existed for 28 years. Draft after draft went into Jake's trash can as I struggled to find the right tone, the right words, the right balance between facts and emotions. Jake had already left for work when I finally settled on the final version. It was 5 pages long, typed on his computer and printed on plain white paper. Professional, factual, and devastating. "Dear Mom, Dad, and Tyler," it began. "By the time you read this, I will no longer be living in this house. This is not an emotional decision or a temporary tantrum. This is a permanent change based on information I discovered about how this family actually operates. I documented everything. The rent money being diverted to Tyler's fund, the illegal tax filings, the systematic manipulation designed to keep me in a subordinate position. I included specific dates, dollar amounts, and references to the documents I had found in Dad's office. For 3 years, I have paid $34,200 in rent, believing it was my contribution to household expenses. Instead, every dollar has been deposited into an account labeled Tyler Education Fund Plus. You have used my labor to fund Tyler's privileged lifestyle, while portraying me to extended family as financially irresponsible and unstable. I attached copies of the bank statements, the tax documents showing the illegal dependent claims, and excerpts from Dad's journal that revealed the calculated nature of the manipulation. Dad, you have been claiming me as both a rental tenant and a dependent on your tax returns for 3 years. This is federal tax fraud, punishable by significant fines and potential criminal prosecution. I have documented this thoroughly and forwarded copies to appropriate authorities. The letter addressed Mom's complicity in the situation, Tyler's willingness to accept benefits he knew came at my expense, and Dad's systematic campaign to isolate me from potential sources of support within our extended family. I am not asking for an apology because I believe you genuinely think your behavior was justified. I am demanding return of the $34,200 that was collected from me under false pretenses, plus interest and penalties as calculated by the professionals who are now handling this matter. The final paragraph was the hardest to write. Tyler, your graduation gift was purchased with money I earned, working 60-hour weeks for 3 years. Your road trips, your spring break vacations, your entire post-college lifestyle has been funded by my sacrifice. I hope you enjoy the car because it represents the last contribution I will ever make to your success. From now on, you will have to earn what you want, just like everyone else. I sealed the letter in an envelope and left it propped against the salt shaker on the kitchen table, where they would definitely see it. Then I went upstairs to pack. I had lived in that room for 10 years since graduating high school, and I was amazed at how little I actually wanted to take with me. Most of my clothes, my laptop, some books, and a few personal items that had sentimental value. Everything else felt contaminated by the years of manipulation and exploitation. As I packed, I could hear Dad getting ready for work downstairs. His morning routine was always the same: coffee, newspaper, shower, then off to his insurance office by 8:30. Mom would leave for her job at the school district office around the same time. Tyler was still sleeping off his graduation celebration and probably would not be up until afternoon. Perfect timing. I would be gone before anyone realized what was happening. I loaded my pickup truck with everything I cared about keeping: 3 trash bags of clothes, 2 boxes of books, and personal items, my guitar that I had not played in months, and my toolbox from when I used to work on cars as a hobby. 28 years of life condensed into a truck bed half full of possessions. Before I left, I walked through the house one more time. The living room where we used to watch movies together when Tyler and I were kids before the favoritism became so obvious. The kitchen where I had eaten thousands of meals, contributing my share of grocery money for the last 3 years. The family room where Tyler had opened his graduation gifts just 2 days earlier. None of it felt like home anymore. It felt like a place where I had been an unwelcome tenant, tolerated but not valued, useful but not appreciated. I took one last look at the letter on the kitchen table. 5 pages that would shatter their comfortable narrative about family roles and responsibilities. 5 pages that would force them to confront the reality of what they had done. Then I walked out the front door, got in my truck, and drove away. The sense of relief was overwhelming. For the first time in years, I was driving somewhere without calculating how much gas money I could afford to spend, without worrying about getting back in time to prepare for another shift at work, without the constant background stress of managing everyone else's expectations. I drove straight to Jake's apartment, where he had already cleared out the spare bedroom for me. We moved my stuff in quickly and then sat in his living room drinking coffee and talking about what came next. "How do you feel?" he asked. Terrified, free, angry, relieved, pretty much every emotion at the same time. That sounds about right for someone who just escaped from an abusive situation. Around noon, my phone started ringing. First call was from Mom, then Dad, then Tyler. I let them all go to voicemail. By 2 o'clock, I had missed 17 calls and received 12 text messages ranging from concerned to angry to desperate. I turned off my phone and went for a walk around Jake's neighborhood. I needed time to process what I had just done before dealing with their reactions. When I came back an hour later, Jake was grinning. "Dude, you need to see this. Your family is losing their minds." He had been monitoring social media while I was gone. Tyler had posted on Facebook asking if anyone had seen me claiming there had been a family emergency. Mom had called Jake's mother, asking if I was okay, and Dad had apparently driven to both my workplaces looking for me. "Mrs. Rodriguez from the auto parts store called here looking for you. She said your father showed up demanding to know where you were, and she told him that was none of his business. She wanted to make sure you were safe." The thought of Mrs. Rodriguez standing up to my father made me smile for the first time that day. She was a tough woman who did not take nonsense from anyone, and she had always treated me with respect and kindness. "What about my shift tomorrow?" I called and talked to her myself. Explained that you were dealing with a family situation and would be back to work Monday. She said to take whatever time you need and that your job would be waiting. That was when I realized something important. The people at my jobs cared more about my well-being than my own family did. Mrs. Rodriguez had protected my privacy and my job security without even knowing the details of what was happening. My warehouse supervisor had been less sympathetic, but even he had agreed to let me use sick days to cover the missed shifts. Meanwhile, my family was panicking not because they were worried about my safety, but because their financial strategy had just collapsed and their comfortable family narrative had been exposed as a lie. I turned my phone back on long enough to send one text message to each of them. "I am safe. Do not contact me until you have read and understood the letter I left. When you are ready to discuss returning the money you took from me, we can talk." Then I turned the phone off again and helped Jake make dinner. For the first time in years, I was eating a meal that I had not paid for with rent money in a place where I was welcomed as an equal rather than tolerated as a tenant with someone who valued my company rather than my financial contributions. It felt like coming back to life after being underwater for 3 years. I kept my phone turned off for the first 48 hours, but Jake's phone became ground zero for the family crisis I had unleashed. His mother called him 6 times on Saturday alone, relaying increasingly frantic messages from my mom. "Your mother sounds absolutely hysterical," Jake told me after the 3rd call. "She keeps saying there has been a terrible misunderstanding and begging you to come home so they can explain everything." "What did you tell her?" "That you are safe, you are staying here voluntarily, and that she should read the letter you left if she wants to understand why you left." By Sunday morning, Jake's patience was wearing thin. "Dude, I think you need to turn your phone back on and deal with this. My mom is threatening to drive over here if she does not hear from you soon." When I powered up my phone, it immediately started buzzing with notifications. 47 missed calls, 32 text messages, and 14 voicemails. I scrolled through the caller ID. Mom, Dad, Tyler. Mom, Dad, Mom, Tyler, Dad. Over and over, increasingly desperate attempts to reach me. The text messages told the story of their escalating panic. Saturday, 10 a.m. Mom. "Myron, honey, please call me. We found your letter. There are some things we need to discuss." Saturday, 11 a.m. Dad. "Son, you need to come home immediately. We can work this out like adults." Saturday, 1 p.m. Tyler. "Dude, what the hell? Mom is crying and Dad is having some kind of breakdown. Just come home." Saturday, 3 p.m. Mom, please just call me back. I know you are upset, but running away is not the answer. Saturday, 5 p.m. Dad. Myron, your behavior is completely unacceptable. You have responsibilities here. Saturday, 8 p.m. Tyler. Look, man, I did not know about the rent money thing. Can we just talk about this? Sunday, 7 a.m. Mom, your father is having chest pains. Please come home. Sunday, 9 a.m. Dad, I am going to start calling your friends if you do not respond today. Sunday, 11 a.m. Tyler. This is insane. You are destroying our family over money." The voicemails were even more revealing. I listened to them with Jake, both of us amazed at how quickly their strategy shifted from anger to manipulation to desperation. Dad's first message was all authority. "Myron, I do not know what kind of game you think you are playing, but you need to get home right now. Your mother is upset, your brother is confused, and you are acting like a child." By his third message, the tone had changed. "Son, I think you have misunderstood some things about our family finances. Come home and we can sit down and go through everything together. There are details you do not understand." His final message, left at 11 p.m. Saturday night, was pure panic. "Myron, please. Your mother has not stopped crying. Tyler is talking about not taking the car. Everyone is miserable. Whatever you think happened, we can fix it. Just come home." Mom's messages were heartbreaking in a different way. She alternated between denying any knowledge of the financial arrangement and begging me to forgive whatever mistakes had been made. "Honey, I had no idea your father was putting your rent money in Tyler's account. If I had known, I would have said something. Please call me back so we can figure this out." Tyler's messages revealed that he was finally understanding the reality of his situation. "Myron, I swear I did not know Dad was using your rent money. I thought he was just being generous with graduation gifts. If you want me to give the car back, I will. Just please come home and talk to us." But it was the message I received on Sunday afternoon that showed me just how desperate they had become. "Myron, this is your Aunt Linda. Your father called me asking for help finding you. He seems to think you might be in some kind of trouble or having a mental health crisis. I told him that did not sound like you, but I wanted to check in. Call me when you get a chance." Dad had started calling extended family members, trying to build a narrative that I was having some kind of breakdown, rather than acknowledging that I had discovered his financial scheme, the same strategy he had used for years to isolate me, now being deployed to manage this crisis. I called Aunt Linda back, and her reaction was everything I had hoped my parents' reaction would be. "Oh my God, Myron. Your father told us you were financially irresponsible and needed tough love. He never mentioned that he was charging you rent or that your money was going to Tyler. This is completely different from what we were told." She paused, and I could hear her processing the information. "Honey, this is not okay. What your father did is not normal family dynamics. This is exploitation." "Did he call other people too?" "He called your Uncle Gary, your cousin Beth, and me that I know of. He was trying to get us to help convince you to come home, saying you were having some kind of crisis. But when I asked for details about what kind of crisis, he got vague and defensive." Aunt Linda had always been the most direct person in our family, the one who called out nonsense when she saw it. Having her validation meant more to me than any number of desperate voicemails from my parents. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I am going to get my money back, and then I am going to build a life that does not depend on their approval or support." "Good for you. And if you need anything at all, you call me. What they did was wrong, and you should not have to handle this alone." Monday morning brought a new development. I was at work at the auto parts store when Mrs. Rodriguez came over to my station looking annoyed. "Myron, your father is here again asking for you. I told him you were working and could not be disturbed, but he is being persistent." Through the front windows, I could see Dad's car in the parking lot. Tyler was with him, both of them clearly agitated. "Do you want me to call the police?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked. "Because if he is bothering you, I will not hesitate." "No, it is okay. Let me talk to them." I walked outside to where they were waiting by their car. Dad looked like he had not slept, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his clothes wrinkled. Tyler looked uncomfortable, like he wished he was anywhere else. "Son, we need to talk," Dad said immediately. "This has gone far enough?" "Did you read my letter?" "Yes, I read your letter. There are things you do not understand about family finances and long-term planning. You are seeing this situation in a very narrow way. I understand that you stole $34,000 from me while lying about what you were doing with it." Tyler stepped forward. "Look, Myron, I had no idea about the rent money. If I had known, I would have said something. You knew I was paying rent while you got everything paid for. You knew I was working 60 hours a week while you partied through college. You knew our situations were completely different, and you never questioned why. Because I thought Dad was just being generous with me and expecting responsibility from you. I did not think it was connected. Dad interrupted. The money is not stolen, Myron. It was invested for family purposes. Tyler will need startup capital for his business ventures. You were contributing to family success. My money was contributing to Tyler's success while I ate ramen noodles and worked double shifts. How is that family success? Because when Tyler succeeds, the whole family benefits. When he starts his business, there will be opportunities for everyone. The logic was so twisted, so self-serving that I almost laughed. Even now, facing the collapse of his scheme, Dad was trying to frame Tyler's success as something that benefited me. I want my money back, all of it, plus interest. And I want you to stop telling people I am having a mental health crisis. Dad's expression hardened. You are not thinking clearly about this situation. You are throwing away your family over a misunderstanding. It is not a misunderstanding. It is documented fraud. And if you do not return my money, I will be filing formal complaints with the IRS and pursuing civil action to recover what you stole. Tyler looked between Dad and me, clearly realizing for the first time how serious this had become. Dad, maybe we should just give him the money back. I do not need all that stuff anyway. Tyler, do not let your brother manipulate you into feeling guilty about your success. And there it was. Even in the middle of this confrontation, Dad was still trying to maintain the narrative that Tyler deserved everything, while I deserved nothing. I looked at both of them one more time. You have 1 week to return my money. After that, this becomes a legal matter instead of a family matter. I walked back into the store, leaving them standing in the parking lot. Through the window, I could see them having an intense conversation before finally driving away. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at my shoulder. You okay, kiddo? Yeah, I think I am finally okay. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my father without backing down, without accepting his version of reality, without letting him make me feel guilty for demanding fair treatment. It felt like the beginning of everything I should have been all along. The Tuesday evening legal aid clinic at the library was run by a volunteer attorney named Patricia Williams, a woman in her early 60s who specialized in family law and financial abuse cases. When I explained my situation and showed her the documentation I had gathered, her response was immediate and unequivocal. This is one of the clearest cases of financial exploitation I have seen in years. Your father has committed multiple crimes, and you have documented them thoroughly. She spread my photographs across the table in the library conference room, organizing them into categories: tax fraud, rental agreement, misrepresentation, and evidence of systematic manipulation. The tax fraud alone carries penalties of up to $25,000, plus criminal prosecution. The civil case for recovery of your money is straightforward, especially with this level of documentation. What are my options? You can file complaints with the IRS for tax fraud, which is a criminal matter. You can file a civil suit for recovery of the money plus damages. You can do both simultaneously, which I recommend. The criminal case will provide leverage for the civil settlement. She explained the process: filing forms with the IRS, preparing a civil complaint for small claims court, gathering additional documentation to support both cases. The interesting thing about your situation is that your father has created extensive evidence of his own criminal behavior. Most people who commit financial fraud try to hide it. Your father documented it in spreadsheets and journals. Ms. Williams offered to help me prepare the paperwork pro bono, saying my case was so well documented that it would require minimal time investment. I do want to warn you about something, though. Family financial abuse cases often get very ugly very quickly. When people realize they are facing criminal charges and financial penalties, they sometimes become desperate and unpredictable. Wednesday morning brought the first sign of just how ugly things were going to get. Sarah called me at work, her voice tight with concern. Myron, I need to tell you something. Your father called my office yesterday asking for information about our conversation. He claimed he was concerned about your mental health and wanted to know if you had seemed unstable when we talked. What did you tell him? I told him that I could not discuss client confidentiations even though you are not technically a client. Then he started making threats about reporting me to the state bar for giving unauthorized legal advice. The desperation in Dad's behavior was escalating. First, he had tried to portray me as mentally unstable to extended family. Now he was attempting to intimidate the people who were helping me. Sarah, I am sorry. I never meant to drag you into this. Do not apologize. What your father is doing is exactly the kind of intimidation tactic abusers use when their victims start seeking help. It makes me more determined to see you get justice. Thursday brought another unexpected ally. Uncle Gary, Dad's younger brother, called me at Jake's apartment. Myron, I owe you a massive apology. Your father told me years ago that you were having financial problems and needed tough love to become responsible. I believed him, and I feel terrible about it. Uncle Gary explained that Dad had systematically lied to the entire extended family about my character and situation. He told us you were borrowing money from your grandmother before she died, that you were unreliable at work, that you had gambling problems. None of it was true, was it? None of it. I've been working steady jobs since I was 18 and never borrowed money from anyone in the family. I am so angry I can barely think straight. He poisoned our relationships with you based on complete lies. I have been cold to you for years because I thought you were taking advantage of the family. Uncle Gary revealed something that made my blood boil. Your grandmother left money for both you and Tyler in her will, $5,000 each for when you turned 25. Your father told us you had already spent your inheritance on gambling debts, so we gave your portion to Tyler as well. Another $10,000 that had been stolen from me through lies and manipulation. Money that my grandmother had specifically intended for me diverted to Tyler based on fabricated stories about my character. Gary, I never saw a penny of grandmother's inheritance. I did not even know she had left anything for us. Jesus Christ. Myron, what else has he lied about? By Friday, I had filed formal complaints with the IRS and submitted paperwork for a civil lawsuit. Ms. Williams had helped me calculate the total amount I was seeking, $34,200 in improperly collected rent, $10,000 from my grandmother's inheritance plus interest and penalties. Nearly $50,000 total. The civil court clerk, a friendly older man named Mr. Peterson, looked over my filing and whistled softly. This is quite a case, young man. I have seen family financial disputes before, but never with this level of documentation. Your father really kept detailed records of his own fraud. Will the case actually go to court? Most likely it will settle before trial. When people are facing this much evidence of wrongdoing, they usually prefer to negotiate rather than have everything aired in public court proceedings. That afternoon, I got a call at work from someone I had not heard from in over 2 years, my cousin Beth, Uncle Gary's daughter. She was calling from Portland, where she worked as a social worker. Myron, Dad told me what your father has been doing. I am absolutely horrified. I also owe you an apology for believing his lies about you. Beth had always been the family member I was closest to growing up, but our relationship had become distant after I moved back home after high school. Now I understood why. Your father told us you were jealous of Tyler's success and causing problems at family gatherings. He said you had asked not to be invited to events because you felt uncomfortable around Tyler's achievements. We respected what we thought were your wishes. I never said any of that. I stopped getting invited to family events and assumed everyone was just busy. Oh my God, Myron. He has been systematically isolating you from all of us for years. This is textbook abuser behavior. Beth offered to provide a written statement for my legal case documenting the lies Dad had told about me to family members. Her professional background in social work gave her testimony additional credibility. Saturday brought the most unexpected call of all. Tyler called me directly without mom or dad, his voice shaky and uncertain. Myron, can we meet somewhere and talk? Just you and me, no parents. We met at a coffee shop near the community college neutral territory, where neither of us felt pressured or defensive. Tyler looked like he had aged 5 years in the past week. I have been thinking about everything, and I realize I have been a complete idiot. Not just about the money, but about everything. He explained that the graduation celebration had felt wrong from the beginning, but he had pushed aside his discomfort because he wanted to enjoy his success. When Dad handed me those car keys, I knew you should have gotten something too. You have been working your ass off for years while I partied through college, but Dad made it seem like you had chosen your path and I had earned my rewards. Did you really not know where the money was coming from? I swear I did not know it was your rent money. I knew Dad had been saving for my future, but I thought it was his money, his decision how to allocate family resources. I never thought about where the money was actually coming from. Tyler pulled out his car keys and set them on the table between us. I want to give this back. The whole graduation gift situation is tainted now that I know how it was funded. I cannot drive this car, knowing it represents years of your sacrifice. I stared at the keys for a long moment. This was the first genuine gesture of accountability any family member had made. Tyler, I appreciate that. But keeping or returning the car is not really the point anymore. The point is that our family operated on a system where my contributions were expected and invisible, while your achievements were celebrated and rewarded. I know that now, and I hate that I participated in it, even if I did not fully understand what was happening. We talked for 2 hours, the longest, honest conversation we had ever had. Tyler admitted he had always felt pressure to be the golden child to justify the investment Dad was making in his future. He revealed that Dad had been pushing him toward business school and entrepreneurship since middle school, treating his success as a family project that required resources and sacrifice from everyone else. The sick thing is, I do not even want to start a business. I just went along with it because it made Dad proud and brought in money and support. What do you want to do? I want to teach high school history and coach basketball, but Dad says that is throwing away my education and my potential. For the first time, I saw Tyler as something other than the favored son. I saw him as another person, trapped in Dad's system of control and manipulation, just in a different role. When we parted ways, Tyler shook my hand and said something that meant more to me than any apology could have. Myron, I hope when this is all over, we can be brothers instead of competitors. I am tired of being Dad's investment strategy. Driving back to Jake's apartment, I realized that my decision to expose the truth was not just liberating me. It was creating space for other people to escape from roles that had been assigned to them without their real consent. Justice was not just about getting my money back. It was about dismantling a system of control that had damaged all of us in different ways. The small claims court hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late June. I arrived early with Ms. Williams Sarah and a folder containing every piece of documentation we had gathered over the past month. Dad sat on the opposite side of the courtroom with a lawyer he had hired, both of them looking stern and confident. Judge Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, reviewed the case files for several minutes before looking up at both parties. This is quite possibly the most thoroughly documented case of financial manipulation I have encountered in 15 years on this bench. Mr. Henderson, you kept extensive records of your own fraudulent activity. Dad's lawyer immediately objected to the word fraudulent, but Judge Martinez cut him off. Counselor, your client claimed the plaintiff as a dependent on his tax returns, while simultaneously claiming rental income from the same individual. That is fraud, by definition. The only question is the extent of damages and penalties. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Dad's lawyer attempted to argue that the rental arrangement was legitimate and that using the money for Tyler's benefit was simply family financial planning. Judge Martinez was not impressed. Mr. Henderson, you collected $34,200 from your son under the pretense that it was rent for household expenses, then diverted that money to fund your other son's lifestyle while lying to extended family members about the plaintiff's character and financial responsibility. This case represents a clear pattern of financial abuse designed to maintain control over an adult child. She ordered Dad to return the full rental amount plus interest totaling $38,400. Additionally, she ordered him to provide documentation proving the $10,000 from grandmother's inheritance had been returned to Tyler's account with instructions that Tyler was to transfer it directly to me within 30 days. But the most satisfying moment came when Judge Martinez addressed the tax fraud issue. Mr. Henderson, I am required to forward documentation of this case to the Internal Revenue Service for investigation of potential criminal tax violations. You may face additional penalties, fines, and prosecution beyond this civil judgment. Dad's face went white. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but Dad just stared straight ahead, finally understanding that his scheme had consequences beyond family drama. As we left the courthouse, Sarah squeezed my arm. How does it feel? Like I can breathe for the first time in years. 2 weeks later, the IRS investigation concluded with a settlement requiring Dad to pay $12,000 in back taxes and penalties. Tyler voluntarily returned the car to the dealer and used the money to pay me back for grandmother's inheritance, plus interest. But the most important changes were not financial. Mom called me 3 weeks after the court hearing, her voice small and apologetic. Myron, I owe you an apology that I should have given years ago. I knew what your father was doing was wrong, and I should have stopped it. I was afraid of making waves, afraid of admitting that our family was not as perfect as we pretended. Why did you stay silent, Mom? Because I convinced myself that you were strong enough to handle it, that Tyler needed more protection and support than you did. I see now how unfair and harmful that was. Mom had started individual therapy and was working on what she called finding her voice after years of deferring to Dad's decisions about everything. I do not expect you to forgive me immediately, but I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship on more honest foundations. Dad's reaction was more complex. The financial penalties had been severe enough to force him to take out a second mortgage on the house. Tyler's rejection of the business startup plans had left him feeling like his investment strategy had completely failed. 3 months after the court hearing, he showed up at my new apartment unannounced. Son, I need to talk to you. He looked older, defeated in a way I had never seen before. The confident, controlling man who had dominated our family dynamics was gone, replaced by someone who seemed genuinely lost. I have been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize I was wrong. Not just about the money, but about everything. It was the first time in my life I had heard him admit to being wrong about anything. I convinced myself that I was teaching you responsibility and preparing Tyler for success. But what I was really doing was trying to control both of your lives according to my vision of how things should work. He paused, staring at his hands. I treated you like a resource to be managed instead of a son to be supported. I am sorry. The apology was not enough to repair 28 years of damage, but it was a beginning. More importantly, it was genuine. Dad had lost his illusion of control and was finally seeing the situation clearly. What happens now? I asked. Now I try to figure out how to be a better father and a better man. I have started therapy, and I am working on understanding why I thought any of this was acceptable. Tyler and I had been meeting for coffee every few weeks, slowly rebuilding our relationship as equals instead of competitors. He had gotten a job teaching at a local high school and was coaching the freshman basketball team. For the first time in his life, he was pursuing his own goals instead of Dad's expectations. It is weird how much happier I am making $35,000 a year teaching than I ever was thinking about making millions in business, he told me over coffee one evening. I actually look forward to going to work. 6 months after leaving home, I had used my settlement money to enroll in an automotive technology program at the community college and put a down payment on a small apartment across town. My relationship with my family was evolving from damaged to functional, built on honesty instead of manipulation. The auto parts store had promoted me to assistant manager, and Mrs. Rodriguez had become something of a mentor, teaching me about business operations and customer service. She'd grown up in a family with similar dynamics and understood the recovery process. The hardest part, she told me one day, is learning to trust your own judgment after years of being told your perceptions were wrong. But once you start trusting yourself, everything else becomes possible. Uncle Gary and Aunt Linda had made special efforts to include me in family gatherings, and I was slowly reconnecting with extended family members who were horrified to learn how they had been manipulated into avoiding me. Cousin Beth had become one of my closest friends, calling every few weeks to check in and offering advice about navigating family relationship recovery. The thing about surviving financial abuse, she told me, is that you become much stronger and more independent than people who never had to fight for their autonomy. That strength serves you well in every area of life. One year after walking out of my family's house, I was sitting in my own living room, studying for my automotive certification exam and planning my future. I had money and savings for the first time in my adult life. I had friendships based on mutual respect rather than utility. I had family relationships that were honest instead of manipulative. Most importantly, I had learned the difference between responsibility and exploitation, between family loyalty and family abuse, between helping people you love and being used by people who claim to love you. The note I left on the refrigerator that morning had been the first honest thing I had ever done for myself. It had cost me the illusion of a perfect family, but it had given me something much more valuable, the knowledge that I was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth investing in. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their worst behaviors. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is refuse to be exploited by people who mistake your loyalty for weakness. I learned that self-worth cannot be given by others. It can only be claimed by yourself. I learned that financial independence creates emotional freedom. I learned that the people who truly care about you will support your growth, not exploit your dedication. Dad eventually learned that respect must be earned, not demanded. Tyler learned that achievements feel hollow when they are built on someone else's sacrifice. Mom learned that silence in the face of injustice is complicity, not peace. And I learned that walking away from toxicity is not giving up on family. It is insisting that family relationships be built on love and respect, rather than control and manipulation. The best part is Tyler and I are finally brothers instead of competitors. Mom and I are rebuilding our relationship on foundations of honesty. Dad and I are learning to interact as equals rather than authority figure and subordinate. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can rebuild it properly. Sometimes the most destructive thing you can do to a dysfunctional system is simply refuse to participate in it anymore. That note changed everything, but it was not magic. It was simply the first step in a long process of claiming the life and relationships I deserve to have. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family members were taking advantage of your loyalty or generosity? How did you handle it? What advice would you give someone who is struggling to set boundaries with family members who do not respect them? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to like this video if it resonated with your own experiences. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it encourages anyone in a similar situation to trust their instincts, document the truth, and never settle for being treated as less valuable than they truly are. Remember, your worth is not determined by other people's treatment of you. You have the power to demand the respect and fairness you deserve. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggle. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to accept treatment that diminishes your value as a human being. Until next time, remember that you are worth fighting for, worth protecting, and worth investing in. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.